expensive. But
Hello, Senator. And Judge
oh,
Lewis.
go ahead.
I was saying hello, hello.
Hello. Right back at you.
Yep, thank you. Okay.
So, Judge, I got an email from Senator Honeyford, and he will not be on until 1 o'clock.
Okay.
Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay.
Representative Hoff, hello. Navy.
Hi.
You're twirling on us. It's going to give us vertigo.
I know I'm sitting in my truck in John Day, Oregon, and I had to get the best picture available. So. I'm not driving though. I'm not driving.
Okay.
Show us your hands.
All
Show
right.
us your hands.
You're driving with your knees, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Judge, Senator Peterson's out of the country, and Rep Dolan was going to try to make it. She's camping.
She's down. Yeah, she's camping.
Yeah.
Wow.
Hey, Zoom. I'm camping too. Zoom calls work everywhere. I'll have to talk to Lori about skipping this meeting.
Yes, you will. No, she said she was going to try to make it. So,
Okay. Well, we'll give her a couple of minutes and we'll get started.
okay.
When are we going to get back to real meetings?
Well, we were going to this time, but Thurston County changed the rules, so
What did they say?
they have to mask up in these meetings.
You got to mask up, and it's hard to understand people when they have masks on. At least I find that to be true.
You might share that with the superintendent of public instruction.
Oh, no, I'm not going there. Nope. So is everybody having just a great summer?
Actually, yeah, we were down in Oregon. Got back a week ago, less than a week, a little over a week ago. We were in Bend and had a lot of
Ooh.
smoke the last couple days, but
Yep.
most of the time it was pretty good.
Okay.
No, I was going to go ahead.
Oh, my son and I did a bicycle ride from San Francisco down almost to Santa Barbara, but
Wow.
it was a nice ride.
No
That's
smoke,
great.
not a lot of smoke. Did you have smoke, Dan, or
Say again?
did you have smoke?
Nope, not at all. Had fog though.
Well, I think we ought to start, and if Rep Dolan signs in from the gorge or wherever she is, she can join us.
Sounds good.
You have your agenda. Jennifer has asked that we add an item relating to ethical issues with respect to providing assistance to Afghanistan refugees. You've had a number of questions about that. So if there's no objection, I'll add that to the agenda, but we'll do it as item number 6.
Sounds good.
Okay, first item on the agenda is approval of the minutes of our meeting of June 3rd, 2021, which is attached as tab A to your materials. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? Seeing and hearing none, if I could have a motion for approval, please.
I move
I'll
that.
move.
Yep,
Second.
I got a motion, motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Employment disclosure forms, tab B.
3 of them.
3 forms.
First one is, excuse me, from Lorraine Avery, who is the legislative assistant for Senator King, I believe, and her husband is the production design services assistant manager in legislative support services. So he does the stuff like when we update the ethics manual, he does a lot of the work behind it. Any kind of, the awards we've given people, plaques, that sort of stuff. He does all that stuff. So there it is.
Any questions or objections? All right, next one, please.
Next one is Emily Stone, who is in LA for Representative Macri. She has a contract with the Criminal Justice Training Commission to teach police officers how to use trauma-informed interviewing skills with victims. It's something that she is trained to do and has done in the past. And she consulted with us, ethics advisors, and we recommended that she file a contract disclosure form just to make sure that the board was okay with it. And then the third one, Philip Craig's a legal intern with OPR, and his wife is a fiscal analyst employed by OPR. So he's just an intern. He's just part of the intern program. And it was recommended he fill this out as a just precaution to be cautious.
Mhm.
So, and those are the three.
Any objections to any of the three? Okay, so
Nope.
you're hearing none? Tom?
Just a question. So on Emily's, is she a new employee? No.
No,
So is this a new, she's done this in the past, but hasn't sought approval in the past, or?
if she's done it in the past, it was before she was working as a legislative
Okay.
assistant, and it's
Okay.
come up again, and so she
Okay.
consulted with us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, next item 3 is revisit discussion on handling of complaints from a person entitled to whistleblower protection. If you saw in the minutes, we are waiting to hear from our AG about what their view is of the subject. So Jennifer, what's the update?
Well, apparently the AG was unaware of the deadline, although I know I had a conversation with him about it. So there isn't anything to show you. We did have a conversation with him about the discussion the board had at the meeting in June and some of their concerns. Particularly, I talked to him about the feeling by some board members that the board members needed to know who the complainant was. And how would that work? Is that if the members of the board know who the complainant is that truly whistleblower protection? And so he and I talked back and forth about it. He came up with a question that he was then going to research, and that is basically what I'm waiting for. And I asked him whether he could come today and talk about it, but he's unavailable. He's in a hearing. So that's what I know.
So it's been, Mr. Chairman, may I
Yes.
ask a question?
Yes, please.
So it's been a couple of months since you posed the question to him. I'm struck that he hasn't brought an answer back by now. Has he given you any kind of time frame? I mean, the world
Well,
is spinning faster than his responses seem to indicate.
Well, I had a discussion with him. Actually, I had a discussion with him not too long after our last board meeting. And at that time, I wanted a response by, I think it was July 27th, when our July hearing or meeting was scheduled. And then when we canceled that, I emailed him and said, okay, you don't have to have it done by then. But I did have a conversation with him at some point about, it'd be great to have it by August. He's had, I don't know what they are. There have been some family issues, and so he's been out of the office a bit.
Okay, Ms.
Well-
Madsen? Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead. Representative Hoff.
Well, I guess I mean, family issues always have a priority. There's no question about that. Short of that, it just seems to be a little bit lengthy, but again, shifting paradigms here regarding family issues is certainly important.
Ms. Madsen?
Yeah, I probably should have reminded him several times. And I didn't. So part of that could be bad staff work.
Mhm.
Ms. Madsen?
Thank you. I was hoping this discussion could be with the full board. We're missing a number of members for this discussion, and we don't have the AG response. So I'm wondering if, I hate to say this, but I'm wondering if we should postpone it again. I just asked that question, Mr. Chairman.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're missing 3 members. The answer was going to be, as I read the minutes and remember the discussion, the answer from the AG was going to be sort of the heart of our conversation about what we're required to do or not required to do. So I think the suggestion to move it to October 4th, I don't think we think anything pending at this point. So it's not like there's people waiting for the answer. But I think moving it to October 4th makes some sense. But I think we need to communicate to our AG that, we mean it. Right? We're ready to discuss it. We need an answer, and we'd like him at the meeting.
Mhm.
So your next meeting is not till October 4th.
Yeah, October 4th.
So I did find his email to me, which was sent on July 15th. And he said, this is the issue based on our discussions that he articulated, where a complaint is filed by a state employee and where, I wouldn't necessarily write it this way, and where therefore the identity of that state employee is confidential under 4252-410, which is the Ethics Act that says they're entitled to whistleblower protection. Whether the board should be screened from knowing the name of the complainant. If so, the identity of the complainant would be protected from both the board and the respondent. This may help protect the board from any claim of improper ex parte communications between it and staff pursuant to the Administrative Procedures Act. The other question he asked me was why I automatically send new complaints, copies of new complaints to board members. And I said, it's always been, it was the practice of my predecessors. So I just picked it up and did it. And he indicated there is nothing in the rules or the law that requires that. So anyway, that's kind of where his thinking was after our lengthy discussion. So.
Well, I mean, I'm uncomfortable making a decision because I know certainly Senator Peterson has pretty strong views on the whistleblower provisions, and to proceed without our other 3 members, probably not something we ought to do. But I would suggest that, assuming there's no objection from the board members, that we put it on the October 4th and make it clear to our council, Attorney General council, that we need to have responses. And I think it'd be good if he's at the meeting and able to answer questions that we might have.
I will share that with him.
Hey, Terry,
Yes.
I can barely hear you.
You know, that always seems to be a problem. I tested my microphone when I signed in, and I don't know how to go. And it sounded just fine, but I don't know how to go back and improve it. So I will lean closer and talk louder. How about that?
Okay, or maybe I just won't listen to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, no. People have complained about that before. Okay, item 4, discussion of advisory opinion review process. Is a memo in your packet under tab C. The subcommittee has met twice, and we have 2 members here today who are not on the subcommittee, so most of us know what we're talking about. But I'll hand it off to Jennifer in just a second. But I think our idea was to ask the board, in essence, are we on the right track? We're talking about approaching it, dealing with rules that apply to campaigns. And the memo relates to mailing restrictions and concept of adopting a new advisory opinion that incorporates those portions of prior opinions that are still applicable, and then archiving those prior opinions so that people can look to presumably one place to determine what is the current board thinking on the issue of mailing. I guess that's sort of a summary of where I think we are. Other members may not necessarily agree, but I think that's where we are. So, Jennifer?
Yeah, I think that's it. So when the first meeting of the subcommittee, we basically kicked around a bunch of ideas and thoughts on how to approach this. And there are, as I think I've told you before, something like 78 advisory opinions in total. And one of the things that the board decided would be a good idea, or the advisory committee thought we ought to attack or review, I guess is a better word, review the ones dealing with campaign issues first, since the campaign, the election year is soon to be upon us. And so I went through all of the advisory opinions that pertain to campaigns, and mailing restrictions was one of them. And what I discovered was that many of the advisory opinions dealing with the mailing restrictions have been dealt with, if you will, by statutory changes. So this section 4252-185 was amended about 6 or 7 times since it was first enacted, and it was enacted by initiative way back in the early 90s. And so what you have is a narrowed down version of, or sort of so one of the things we talked about was, what should we do with these old opinions? There are some that are not applicable anymore at all. And then there are some that are, parts of them are applicable, parts of them are not. Do we care about the fact patterns that were presented in these advisory opinions, or do we just care about the opinion of the board? So what I did in this document that you got was put together sort of an outline of if we did a new opinion and it dealt with mailing restrictions, this is sort of how we would organize it. That the statutory changes have dealt with many of the issues that some of those advisory opinions presented early on. There are exceptions to the mailing restrictions that people forget between election years, that we meaning the ethics advisors have to remind them of, but they're all in the current statute. And then explanation of former opinions. And then what I did was, what the advisory committee wanted me to do was look at each advisory opinion dealing with mailing restrictions and whether that advisory opinion had ever been cited in a complaint opinion. Because as you will recall, when we talked about reviewing advisory opinions, we also determined we would not touch complaint opinions because they're kind of like court cases. Anyway, so I went through all of them and looked at the reasoning in the opinions and whether that reasoning was still relevant today in light of the amendments to 185. And so what you have is sort of the reasoning of each one, whether it was cited in a complaint opinion, and if it was, what part of that advisory opinion was cited in the complaint opinion, and then is the reasoning still relevant, and if so, should it be included in a new advisory opinion? What the subcommittee didn't decide and wanted to discuss is, what do you do with those old opinions that you're not going to use anymore? And I know that the Executive Ethics Committee does what they call archive them. So they're still available, but they're not of any kind of precedential value anymore. So you can look at them if you want, but they're not, people don't cite them. Anyway, there are, as I was going through these and looking at the reasoning, there are a number of these advisory opinions that really are not needed anymore because the statute completely addressed the issue. And what's interesting is these advisory opinions or a complaint opinion would be issued by the board, and then the next legislative session, you'd see a bill that addressed that particular issue. But I don't know if you want me to go through each one, Judge, or do you just want me to end?
Well, let me ask first, because we have both Representative Hoff and Ms. Prager, because you are not members of the advisory committee, what your reaction is about how we're going about this.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I think it's obviously a daunting task to go through all of those. The question that came to my mind is, what did the initiative discuss, and is it important to interpret over and over and over again what indeed the initiative reviewed, number one? But since we've done that in the past, I would assume that if we come out with a new advisory opinion, it would simply supersede the others.
Correct.
I struggle, Jennifer, with why we would even need to hang on to the others. But
well,
that's just,
that's a good point, Rep. Hoff. You could definitely do that in a new advisory opinion and just say something to the effect of, this opinion supersedes the opinions in the former opinions, blah, blah, blah.
or it would get so complicated for individuals to follow. If indeed it didn't, you'd have to you'd have to get
Yeah.
down this rabbit trail and find all of the subsequent opinions if one didn't
Right.
supersede the other.
Well, and I think, and I'll let the judge speak for himself, he was suggesting a new advisory opinion to make it clearer to people. These are this is the, you know, these are your restrictions during election season. And, you know, and there was also a discussion at one point about, and I don't know whether the subcommittee ever resolved it, about whether or not there are issues that have come up that have never been resolved by the board, and should this opinion be used to resolve some of those issues?
Right. Yeah, you highlighted some of those in the,
Yeah,
right. Yeah, I mean, I think it's maybe a good idea, just responding to Representative Hoff, that if we are issuing a brand new opinion, which I think is the direction we are headed at least, that to have the old ones still drifting around out there, we may be better just to call it out. Opinions 95-19 and 96-4 are superseded, hereby superseded, or something like that. So folks don't have to start thumbing back through because it doesn't matter what we did then. This is what we're doing right now to reflect the changes to the law and technology and answering some questions that haven't been answered before. Keep it really as simple as possible. Ms. Prager, what are your thoughts?
Well, I was thinking actually, it was very helpful for me to see Roman numeral 3 and having the new opinion. I agree. Why archive the old ones? Just kind of fodder to trying to make a point with old opinions. I
agree.
I don't see the
Yeah.
point.
so you would leave them and just have like a big banner at the top that this opinion has been superseded by advisory opinion 2021-blah.
I wouldn't put it, I think you'd put it in 2021 dash whatever it is, sort of at the bottom. This opinion supersedes the following advisory opinions, and just list them by number or something like that.
Or are you suggesting, Jennifer, that those other ones by opinion number would still exist, and then you put the superseded by on top of
Yeah,
that?
so what I was thinking was you should do it in both places, because people will, I mean, there's no ability to shepherdize these opinions, which means you look up the subsequent history of them. And so if you go to AO 95-19, because gee whiz, it deals exactly with the topic that you're looking at, then if you don't say this opinion superseded by this opinion, somebody's going to think that one's still good. So I would put it both on the old opinion and on the new opinion and just reiterate it, simply because of the way that people sometimes use these. Just a suggestion.
I would
Ask Ethics Council, since you're the ones that are going to work with it every day, or what are your thoughts?
Can I just share something? Well, when I retired, I realized what a hoarder I was. And having places to store things in one's hard drive and other places. Actually, maybe that is better, because even if we say we aren't going to archive, it doesn't mean people don't have a whole lot of these opinions somewhere in their drawers or on their computer. So I'm actually speaking against my original thought, because people will bring them up anyway.
Right.
Anything from Victoria, Jeannie, what do you think? I think Ohad has disappeared. Yes. Oh, there he is. He's got his hand up. Ohad.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think the problem is, Jennifer and I will talk. Hey, I have this issue. She says, "Oh, there's an advisory opinion." I go to the website, do a Control F to find the topic. If there's not something that either pulls that advisory opinion or annotates in it that it's superseded, really what requiring us to do is then every time we go to an opinion is pull the first opinion and then kind of cross-check it through every other potential opinion. So I think either any sort of designation that when you're looking at a document that it's superseded, whether it's marked archive, whether it's marked this opinion is superseded, I think would actually save more time in the long run than having people have to go back and forth to make sure they're not relying on a bad advisory opinion.
So sort of a belt and suspenders. New opinion itself would set forth it supersedes the following, and then each of the ones that is superseded would also have a designation that this opinion is superseded by 2022 dash whatever the number is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful.
Okay. Any other comments? I had not contemplated, Jennifer, that we would go through the open questions today.
Mhm.
I think I'd rather do it when we have a full complement of people. But I think for the next meeting, I assume our subcommittee will meet at least once more. We can get the mailing restrictions tightened up. And then we had other issues respecting that were also campaign oriented that maybe didn't have quite as many decisions. And we may be able to bundle them all together for the next meeting for revisions dealing with campaigns. I think we had a doorbelling, and maybe that was in here already, but we had quite a few other topic areas that
Right.
sort of an exemplar. This is kind of an exemplar of how each of them would be dealt with. But this had the most topics that were underneath it, as I recall.
And I think, Judge, if I recall, the subcommittee wanted to bring it to the full board to make sure
Right.
that
Right.
the board was okay with the approach being
Mhm.
taken by the subcommittee.
Well, let me just ask of the board members that are here that the concept of the sort of double reference to superseding, is everybody comfortable with doing? Sounds like that's the best way to notify people that this is okay. Representative Hoff has 2 thumbs up. Mr. Holman only has 1 thumb up. Is that okay? Okay. All right. So if our next time around, we'll final product, we'll do it that way. So from the subcommittee standpoint, we'll need to meet again, and let's kind of get this down to a point. So at our October 4th meeting, that when we hopefully have a full complement of the board, we'll be able to move it forward. It'd be nice with campaign season starting December 1st. Isn't that the starting date?
December 1st is when the mailing restrictions go into effect.
At least we can have the mailing one done by then, and maybe all of them as a target. Okay.
Yep.
Anything else we need to talk about on the advisory opinion review process? Speaking of revisions, ethics manual revisions, that's tab D.
Yeah, this, I sent this out. I have heard from, well, first of all, I sent out the Word version if people wanted to do track changes. And the problem is when you do the PDF to the Word version, it gets the spacing and all that, the formatting gets messed up. So I also sent you the PDF version so you could see what it would look like were it printed. I have heard from Senator Peterson, Tom Homan so far, and Senator Honeyford. Other than that, I don't know that people are interested in commenting or Tom raised an interesting issue that, there's basically when I go to update it, I look at the opinions that have been submitted, decisions the board may have made in a board meeting that would be reflected in the minutes. And any kind of ethics advisories or advisory opinions that have been issued, and then I update it that way. There are, some of the text is old. I don't know when it was written, but I haven't changed it, although people have raised a couple of issues about stuff that's in there that isn't reflected in a board decision in any way. I guess I prefer not to deal with that right now, simply because I am already very late in getting the newest version out. But I do think it's worth a discussion about whether some of the language in there is still appropriate.
I mean, I read through it to look and see, does anything jump out and kind of grab me by the collar and say, wait a minute, that's not right. That's not the way we do it anymore. I didn't see anything like that. I think there may have been some fine points that may not reflect exactly where we are. But if we're going to be revising basically all of our advisory opinions, probably not the time to start fiddling with the manual. If 2 months from now, everything is going to kind of be restated, and the manual could reflect the restated opinions.
Well, the manual, the update for 2022 would reflect
Exactly. No, that's
those
right.
new statements.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So.
But when I read through it, that's what I was looking for. Is there something in
Yeah.
here that's obviously not right?
Right.
Any other comments? Any comments from council who have to use this regularly? Nope, guess not. So at this point, are we comfortable having the manual? I don't know how you publish it, Jennifer.
It's updated online. And then in the past, they printed, I've never had them print more than 50 copies. That's probably too many, especially in, virtual land. I like a hard copy just because I write in the margins and stuff like that. But, and I could provide one to each of you as well, if you'd like. It's a nice way to review things. And the statutes in there too, which I like.
Right, yeah, it does. It makes it all pretty handy.
It puts it all in one place, yeah.
Dan, did you have a question?
Yeah, and we're talking about the legislative ethics manual, is that correct?
Yep.
Yep,
Okay, I mean, it is, let's see, how many pages?
46.
Okay, 46.
no, it's longer than that if you have the statute in there too, Judge.
Mine only goes to 46 and I got everything. Thanks.
I got 41.
No, you only have the part I sent you,
Okay,
All right.
which is the text part, the explanation part.
Okay.
okay, that's a lot. It's a lot.
It is.
Yeah.
Tom, you had raised some questions. What are your thoughts about publishing it at this point?
Well, first, this is a question for Jennifer. I raised one issue with her, and I think it falls into the category of something that we don't necessarily need to look at right now, but probably should in the future. But you said, Jennifer, we got some additional comments from Senator Peterson, and do those
They were
fall-
not, they were not substantive.
Okay, that was my question.
Yeah.
So,
The comments I've received have not been substantive.
yeah.
Except for yours, Tom.
Well, I mean, I don't know what your timeline is on this, Jennifer. We could talk about it a little bit, but I don't know if that's something you want to pursue today or not.
Well, what I would say is that it's ready to be resubmitted. But that portion that you talk about is easy enough to fix if the board wants to, if the board is not in favor of that language.
What was?
So if you wanted to talk about it, go ahead. It's easy to fix.
Have you talked about this with the chair? I feel like
Yes, I have.
I feel like in a weird way, I'm talking about this behind his back, and I don't want to.
No, go ahead.
So, okay, so the issue is there.
I think I brought this
I don't
up.
think so.
didn't I?
No, I don't think so, but I'm not offended. Go ahead.
Thought I
Okay.
did.
I can't speak for Pam, but I'm not offended.
Well, I was willing to just go on and have Christmas at this point, but so the issue has to do with a couple of paragraphs in there that deal with the attendance, and I'm going to say primarily by staff at rallies that are held. And the classic case is one, a rally during session of an interest held by an interest group on the Capitol steps or, elsewhere on campus. And what we do in the manual is basically say that staff, as a matter of complying with the ethics statute, should not attend such rallies.
But it's okay for legislators to.
Yeah. Now, the reason why this caught my attention was we had a discussion about a complaint that we handled a few months ago that basically involved a photograph taken by a legislative staff person who was at a rally. And none of us raised the issue of the appropriateness of the staff person being at the rally and taking photographs. I'm kind of interested in maybe the ethics advisor's opinions on this, because I know that when I was there, I don't think there was ever I don't remember any kind of flat out bar against, hi, Jeannie. Staff attending rallies. In fact, I can conceive of perfectly appropriate circumstances in my mind for staff, policy staff, or even communication staff to be in attendance at a rally that takes place on the Capitol steps, for example. So I'm confessing it's sort of an admission against interest, but I didn't know we had that kind of language in the ethics manual. And I don't recall ever having a conversation when someone talked to me as a supervisor about whether or not people could go to a rally on their own time or as directed by a supervisor or a member. So,
Jeannie, just to say, I need to ask Jennifer a question. Isn't there don't we have an advisory opinion on this?
on whether or not staff can attend rallies.
The whole rallies portion, I thought that was in part of our campaign list.
Well, it is as far as a ballot measure rally
ballot
and what
measures.
members can
Yeah.
say at such a rally,
Right.
but not staff.
Okay. Jeannie?
So the advice that we give people about rallies is never on their own time or on state time can they attend in their personal capacity. So being there to support what the rally is about. And our advice for the personal capacity, even when you are not on state time, is that really is lobbying. That's the whole reason these folks are at the Capitol campus, is they want something from the legislature. So that's lobbying. Lobbying is a conflict with your job, and you can never do it. Now, legislators, of course, their job is to lobby. That's completely different. Legislators attend. I think that we have always advised that it is okay to attend the rally if you're doing your job. So, for example, if you are carrying somebody's briefcase, you're handing them their speech, whatever it is that the member is doing that's appropriate for the member to do. You're taking photos, doing those things that is in your official capacity as a staff person. You're not there supporting the rally personally, then that's okay. And there's very few staff that do that kind of thing. And so when we're doing our training, the focus really is on don't go to the rallies, because usually that's, if you're an LA or a session aide or an intern, you're almost never going to be the one going. It's their comm staff that needs a little bit of assistance. So that's how we've interpreted this and have been advising for a very long time. So I'm hoping that comports with your thinking.
And that makes perfect sense to me. And I guess I'd say that's how I think about it. I don't think that nuance is reflected in the language of the manual.
Ohad?
And I don't think that's a trivial nuance. Yeah.
I'm sorry, Tom, you don't think what? I cut you off.
I don't think that nuance that Jeannie just described is trivial. I mean, the statement in the manual, I think, says a little too
You
much.
can't go. It
Yeah.
says you cannot go.
It says you cannot go, right?
Right.
Okay, Ohad?
Yeah, I was just going to say that the way that Jeannie reported it is essentially the House has reported it or advised on in the past as well. And so I guess, yeah, that I think that's maybe, I don't know how many, but it's one of those areas where the Senate and the House have been aligned in their advice.
Okay. Representative Hoff, you had your hand up. I'm not sure you're still, we lost him. Come on. I don't know if he.
Yeah,
lost
we
it or-
did. Oh, wait, he's waiting to get back on.
Okay.
Hang on. There he is.
Representative Hoff, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I lost you for a second. I just got
Yeah.
back in, so I apologize.
No problem. Well, Tom had suggested I guess, Tom, you're suggesting a change in that portion of the manual that reflects what Jeannie reported is how they're instructing people. Is that right?
Yes, that would be right. And the reason I think this matters is, the staff have ethics advisors to go to, but other people see what's in the manual, compare a staff person's behavior with what they see in the manual, and then we get into messes with folks sometimes when that happens. So it doesn't feel to me, famous last words, it doesn't feel to me like a sentence or two that would clarify this would be terribly difficult to craft. And if Jeannie and Victoria and Ohad could give something, work with Jennifer to put something together, I think that would be good.
I don't think we should delay getting the manual out for very long. So with the consent of the board, if Jennifer could draft some language that deals with that sort of expansion of that comment. And if As long as there's no objection to it, then we can make the change and get the manual out. Is that acceptable to
Sounds good.
everybody? Okay, that's what we'll do. Thank you. Okay, one last item. Jennifer, you wanted to talk about some ethics issues that you're hearing about related to the Middle East or the Afghanistan issues.
Yeah, so and I hope the ethics advisors will chime in because they're the ones really dealing with this, but there have been a number of requests by members to use state resources, post on the website, Facebook, Twitter, information regarding mainly refugee type of information, where you can go, et cetera, et cetera. Many of these organizations are private organizations. And last year, we loosened the rules a little bit as a result of COVID. And the Afghanistan issue, while tragic, is not really a state issue. So what we are all struggling with is there has to be a legislative nexus in order to use state resources. And a lot of us are not seeing the legislative nexus other than, actually, if Victoria is on, you're the one who said it really well, what the real question is. Yeah. Hey, in your email this morning, you summed up the question really well. So,
yeah, it was a stroke of genius. Let me pull it up. I don't quite recall how exactly I said it, to be perfectly honest. But I think that essentially, we grappled with this related to COVID-19 and resources around COVID-19 and how could people sort of get the word out about, resources for people who are experiencing homelessness, people who are experiencing food insecurity. While ordinarily these weren't the types of things that had a legislative nexus, it was like, hey, people are looking out to their legislators for this type of information because they're looking anywhere that they can. Particularly, for our Pierce County-based legislators and our Seattle-based legislators, where we understand a number of Afghan refugees will be coming in, they've received questions from constituents that have led them to want to do more outreach to constituents about how to help the Afghan refugees, where to donate money, where to donate resources, where to donate time, just the sort of general assistance. And we never had sort of an overarching question similar to in the COVID emergency. Is this the type of thing that, even though there isn't a clear legislative nexus to what's happening, to policy being done in Olympia, this is the type of situation, an emerging situation with a fair degree of, time is of the essence, essentially, to get this information out to people, that it would be okay for them to use state resources because people are looking to their legislators to give them that information.
Representative Hoff?
I think I agree with most of your last statement. I might arm wrestle on the fact that it doesn't have a legislative nexus. I believe it does. I mean, and you discussed it very well, and in that it's kind of a crisis of the moment, and our constituents are looking for that direction from legislators. I'm struck with that this would even be a question. Why wouldn't we be able to share resources or direction for our constituents? And Jennifer mentioned the fact that it's not a state issue. I'd arm wrestle on that particular issue again as well. there will be, if there's a dozen, there will be thousands of refugees coming into our state. And if indeed we don't provide some of that assistance, I'm struck with where our constituents may go. If we just say we can't talk to you, I think that would be beyond the pale. So I don't see the question here. I think it's just a matter of that's part of our job. Those are the thoughts from my cheap seats here in John Day, Oregon.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. And I guess that was kind of one of my concerns, the slippery slope concern with the COVID. I think the COVID was an extraordinary circumstance, but with all due respect, I don't think every crisis lends itself to a legislative nexus, especially one of foreign, and we're really, we've gotten requests about, can we talk about visas and process and things that are really federal issues. And I think my concern is, from an ethics perspective, and to be consistent with other advice, I guess I think there's some ways you can get to a legislative nexus, but I think those are few and far between. And I think, we've said on other causes, you can't provide a link to this specific, even a nonprofit business, because it's a private gain for that. And I understand maybe in this arena, there's some fewer, currently the players at the table are fewer, but how do we provide consistent advice? Where do we draw the line? Is it because this one is in the news and this event isn't? I don't think that's the way really to figure that out. I think to stay as much consistent with past advice is probably what the House would prefer, as through an administrative perspective.
What's the downside of this? What I'm struggling with, and maybe I should have the ethics manual in front of me, but I'm struggling with the downside of offering this information.
I guess from an ethics, I don't want to speak for the other advisors. I think, though, the issue is it a violation of the Ethics Act, even for a good cause? Well, it's okay to violate the ethics provisions as long as it's for a good reason, not a bad reason, which is, then we have to go through that subjective test. I mean, the question is, everything we do needs to have a legislative nexus. If something does not,
Everything that we use state resources for.
then we use state resources. Correct.
Well, let me ask a question. If none of the refugees were coming to the state of Washington, there might be an argument. But to the extent that they are coming to the state of Washington and are going to be receiving public assistance, both from the local jurisdiction and eventually from the state of Washington, because they have nothing. They have nothing. Doesn't that change the equation? It's not a comment about, oh, let's help the victims of the earthquake in Haiti or in the state of California. But these folks are coming here. That to me makes a difference. Anyway, Jeannie?
That was actually one of the main points I was going to make, that I think that this is different from many occasions when we say that's a federal issue, you should leave that to the feds. If it was generally about immigration, that's probably where we would go on most of these kinds of questions. But this is so much more personal to Washington State. There are going to be issues that come up of state resources, and certainly members could talk about that. But I think that further, the last part of what Victoria said last time, it feels like this is one of those cases where people, regardless of what you think of how strong the legislative nexus is on helping this group of people privately or whatever that is, it feels like people are really looking to their state legislators for this, especially in Pierce and King County, where we're hearing from folks that they want to be able to answer. And maybe part of the answer to this, what can legislators do, can have a little something to do with, do we post it affirmatively and put things out there about these resources and link to private organizations? Or are we just answering when constituents ask us? And those may be two separate questions, because in my mind, I think it's pretty clear, and hopefully I'm right because I already advised this to somebody, that when somebody asks them a very specific question about where can I find information about that, and that member knows, the office ended up sending out a news article that had a variety of links to organizations, so they weren't choosing one private organization to somehow promote. But it would seem a little odd that we wouldn't be able to at least answer that when a constituent's looking for something and it really truly affects the state and people are expecting to hear from them.
Go ahead. Is your hand still up, or is that a prior hand raised?
No, it's a new one.
Wait.
Oh.
Victoria's had her hand up longer than Ohad.
I haven't. She didn't have the electronic hand up though. Okay.
What?
Victoria, go ahead.
I can't figure it out. I feel like the hand changes locations every time I sign into these meetings.
I've done that on purpose.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm just going to stand here like this the entire time. I just wanted to agree with Jeannie. I will just say, so that you understand that the question is still pending. We do have, because we have I have a significant number of members in our caucus who are from Pierce County and King County. They've wanted to put something affirmatively out about, we understand that there's a lot of questions about where to go. Here are some people, here are the groups who are doing the organization related to these resources. For Afghan refugees, here's who you could go to. So I would just clarify to what Jeannie's point was, is that question is before the board. And I would also just say, more to Rep. Huff's point, just so you understand where we come from, we always want to say yes to our members. Like especially when something awful happens, we always want to say yes. The problem is that often legislative nexus, the analysis is really about whether there's a bill or something that's being done in the legislature in the confines of, policy making that limits what we can do, which is why, I've been asked this question and said no, was asked again and said, hold on, let's just get a better answer for the reasons that Jeannie said. So I just wanted to sort of flavor where often we're coming on. If you all tell us that it has a legislative nexus, we'll find you an argument. We can do that till the cows come home. Like, we'll get you there, but you have to tell us that it's okay.
So one of the things we did with COVID, us ethics advisors, is we said, because members they were getting lots of questions and then they wanted to proactively send out information. So we basically said, put together a list of, where you can go for testing, where you can go for, and it included state agencies and included nonprofit agencies, but it was a big list that didn't differentiate, go to these guys because they're the best, because then you have a potential violation of 160 where you're using state resources to benefit a private group. But if there's a big list that's developed by comms or whatever that everybody uses that says these are the resources in your area, then you're not singling out something specific. You are allowing legislators to assist constituents, because Rep. Hoff raises a good point about they're calling us. What do we do? We say, oh, well, we can't talk to you. This is something that they could do that's within the confines of what we allowed in COVID. Now, Jeannie brought up a good point, which is, do we say it's okay to do that only if they're asked, or do we allow legislators to do that proactively? So it's, if you agree with the list idea, then the question is, do we just let them hand it out to people who've asked, or do we let them hand it out on their website, on Facebook, et cetera?
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think I agree with Jeannie in the sense of, I think there is a difference when constituents contact a member asking for information versus actively putting something out. I have less heartburn with it when it's a comprehensive list instead of people picking and choosing organizations. If there's a list that everyone puts together, everyone agrees on, I think it's a lot different issue than just saying, hey, everyone, I want to post on Facebook, go to this one place. So I think we probably could get there. I guess I'm not necessarily, I think I want to answer Rep. Off's questions. It's what's the big deal? I guess partly it's direction from the board. We're worried about members picking up complaints. If the board comes and says, we think,
Add this vehicle to
this
enable
is
features now.
if this is sufficient enough, we're not going to find a member, violating the rules. Then that's the guidance we'll give folks, and we can deal with it. I think that's just making sure we protect our members. So if the board says, yeah, put a list out and you can do this, we'll advise accordingly.
It's the pleasure of the board. We're at 1:05 and we've got one of our members who's going to join us when we go to executive session. So I don't want to let it hang too long. I mean, what if we did an alert and followed the idea of through that it's a non-preferential list. And the question would be, with a non-preferential list of resources, could that be posted, or does it have to be only in response to a specific constituent request? My view is it should be postable. If it's non-comprehensive, if it's a comprehensive non-preferential list, and these are good people, and just here are resources that are available if you want to help. Anyway, that's sort of my thought, but I'd like to hear from board members. Pam?
I agree with that,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman. I think it boils down to the definition of legislative nexus, and in this case, I would suggest there is. I appreciate the concerns voiced on just global kind of connections, but in this case, I think posting a list would make some sense, but obviously we'll see what the board says.
Pam Edson, you had your hand up.
You're muted. There you go.
You can thank my dog for that. I agree with the chair and with Representative Hoff. I think there is a nexus in that these are refugees coming to the state of Washington, and there is going to be a need. I think legislators responding to constituents' concerns, if you have a number of constituents asking the same questions, being able to post information that's going to be helpful. The emergent nature of this circumstance, getting the information out is important, and you need it to be done timely. So I think being able to post is okay in this circumstance, and there is a nexus sufficient to allow the use of public resources.
Other comments from board members? Let me ask you this way. Is there anyone who doesn't want to proceed that way? Mr. Hummon.
I agree with Pam and Representative Hoff and the chair. I think it'd be a good idea if there are governmental agencies, whether they're at the state or, I don't know how you maybe necessarily craft such a list at the local government level, but I think the emphasis should be on governmental points of contact as well as non-governmental
NGOs. Okay. Other comments?
Are we still speaking of a list? Because I think that what Tom just said, I think a list would be great with both.
Yep, NGOs and governmental. Okay. Jeannie?
Sorry, I can't find the other hand either. I was just going to say that if it sounds like you're coming to an agreement on this, whatever agreement you come to, I know you mentioned doing an alert, which is
Yes.
great and fine if you want to. If you don't want to, I'll speak for myself, and I think the ethics advisors would agree. We can just take what you say here and go forth and give the advice to the caucuses if you don't have time for an alert as well, because again, this is pretty emergent and people are asking now. And I know sometimes an ethics alert takes a while and some wordsmithing and some of those kinds of things. So just as an option.
Jennifer, what do you think? Matt?
I can, it's up to you, Judge. I can draft one
Yeah.
pretty
I mean,
fast.
I guess I'd be more comfortable seeing it in an alert form that the board could look at, taking the discussion to a written form. We're capable of moving that stuff around. We're not going to wait till October 4th. I think we can deal with an alert within the next week to 10 days at the most.
It'll be
we don't have
fast.
any-
It'll be, I mean, I can draft it. I will have the ethics advisors assist me with it, but when it comes to you, I need your response rapidly if you have
Right.
comments so we can get it out.
Yep.
So you might look for something tomorrow because this is emergent. I can do it fast. It's not that long.
It is emergent. Okay. All right. Thank you. Let me see. Any public testimony? I don't think we have any members of the public. We do not. All right. With that, we are going to adjourn. Excuse me. We're going to recess into executive session. And it's 10 after 1. We need 5 minutes or so, like 1:15. Is that enough time for everyone?
Yep.
Okay, 1:15 in executive session.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.